everyone, it's Jan and I am back with another card tutorial to share with you. Do you ever finish making a card and think, I could make that card again and again because you enjoy the process so much? Well, this is that kind of card for me. I love how it turned out and I'm super excited to be able to show you lots of tips and tricks in this tutorial. You may just want to take one of them and use on a card for yourself. So let me show you what we're going to be using. We're going to be using some alcohol inks. I haven't done a tutorial with alcohol ink in a while. And yes, I am pulling out my favorite Christmas crafting supply, the tattered poinsettia. But this is something I'm super excited to share with you. It's called modeling film, and I'm going to add frosted film to it, and we are going to make some dimensional poinsettias. Those two things are actually products that you have to create this particular technique, even if you chose to use another die and embossing folder combination. So here's what's really cool about this Art Parts by Wendy Vecchi. It's called Clearly for Art Modeling Film, and it actually, when you heat it, you can mold it and it'll stay in the shape that you place it in. So I'm going to use some frosted film, and you can see that I am cutting a piece that is a little bit larger than a piece of the film. I decided that as long as I was going to go to the trouble of doing this, I was going to make plenty of flowers with it. And you will see that I was able to make a lot of poinsettias out of this one sheet of film. This is a little awkward, but I found that putting the masking tape down and peeling it back a little at the time, and then I'm going to pull my film and put it on top of that backer paper. It kind of helps you get a really smooth and bubble-free adhesion of the frosted film to the modeling film. And if you happen to have a little hole or a little bubble, go ahead and just use a straight pen and pop that out. I love this frosted film, and for those of you that have not already gotten frosted film, right now it comes in 8.5 by 11 sheets. It used to come on that roll, which made it a little more difficult. So you can see I cut out lots and lots of the poinsettias, and I'm placing them into the embossing folder. Now, I actually thought that it would not emboss if I didn't heat it up just a little bit, but I found that it actually does really well. You don't have to heat it at all. So we're going to start by using our alcohol inks, and I have two of my little blending things, but we're using the felt, not the foam, and I'm using a couple of shades of green alcohol ink, and I believe it's pesto and meadow, I think, and then I'm putting a little blending solution on it. And unlike poinsettias that you've seen me do in the past, I'm only going to do two of the leaves in green. You've seen me do this in the past where I do a whole poinsettia as the green, but for this particular thing that we're going to be doing, I think it's better just to color a couple of the leaves with the green and then move on to the other being the red. And you can see I'm working on my craft mat, and that's okay because you actually can clean up that alcohol ink with some Purell. Now I'm doing several base flowers. Make sure that you have at least one for your base that has the green on it. Now you can see I just squirted some Purell because that's alcohol based. It will clean up your craft mat from the alcohol inks really nicely. So I am using red pepper and currant, and I think I also pulled out watermelon. So there was a little bit of a brightness and a little bit of a dark undertone. Because the frosted film has almost an opaqueness to it, you have to build the color up on this. The frosted film is the side that we are coloring right now. And you can see I just keep working with it. And I go back and add several layers over the course of doing this because I wanted to make the red a really rich red. It's to your taste. However you like it. If you wanted to do pink poinsettias, they would be gorgeous with this as well. But I just, like I've told you in the past, when I'm working on a technique that has several steps to it, I go ahead and make several. Put them in my little goodie box, and then I have them ready to go. Now, these are the centers that come with the die, and you haven't seen me use those in the past, but we're going to because of the way we're going to construct it. So now I'm getting just really brave. I wanted darker leaves, so I'm just picking up and actually adding just a little bit of drops to the leaves so that we got, okay, this is my favorite part. You just warm it slightly, and then you can mold it to the shape that you want. And as it cools, it stays in place. How cool is that? I have 100 things I want to use that film on now that I've actually tried it. I've seen a couple people doing things with it. Love, love, love it now that I've worked with it. It's so easy, simple, and adding that frosted film on top of it is just icing on the cake for these really pretty poinsettias. So I'm just kind of bending the petals, maybe kind of creasing them a little bit along the vein lines. And you can see once they cool, they're really holding their shape really well. For the large poinsettias that we're going to be using, here's what I'm showing you. If you don't like how it turned out, just heat it, flatten it back out, reshape it, and you're good to go. It will do that 100 times. It's not as finicky as like Shrinky Dink is. Okay, so I wanted a little more frost on it, so I did my Distress Rock Candy Stickles, which basically is a matte clear with the clear sparkling glitter on it. And they're just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I don't think the camera is picking up at all how absolutely sparkly and beautiful and frosted and festive these poinsettias are. They're my favorite thing right now. I would use them on so many things. So here's just a fun picture of them up a little close. You can see they're transparent. They're kind of translucent and transparent. Love, love, love how they turned out. So just match them up. For the big poinsettia, I did one with the green, one large with the green, one red, and then added a medium poinsettia on them as well. And that still left me a couple of medium-sized poinsettias to put together too. So you can see I ended up with a lot. Totally easy peasy. Love the results. Just, I thought I would show you. I told you I put the Distress Stickles on there. But, you know, we have wonderful little tools on the end of our hands called fingers. And sometimes just the quickest and easiest thing to do is to use your finger. Now I'm using a hole punch and punching as close to the center as I can because we're actually going to use brads to hold these together. I wouldn't want to use hot glue on that because the heat would move the molding film into a different position. So using the actual brad will actually hold it in place, and then we can actually add it to our card with that brad as well. So I'm lining these up. You don't want them to be just totally on top of each other. Just kind of move them around until you get a look that you like. And I chose to use yellow brad so that when I put the topper on it, it would have that yellow. So now here's another whole technique. Even if you don't want to do the poinsettias, you'll have fun with this. I am using some heavy gesso as my texture paste, and I'm adding in some acrylic paint to tint it to work with the craft cardstock that we're going to turn into wood grain. And again, I have a couple of techniques to show you here because you may want to do something different and you may have different supplies than what I had. So I'm going to make a couple of these, and you just start by putting your colored molding paste down on that strip of masking tape and then scraping it down to get a nice, even, thin layer. Easy peasy, right? Lift it up. The other benefit of having that tape there is it's kind of a hinge. So here are the two ways that we can stain our wood grain. This first one, I'm going to use some Tattered Angels, and it's called, I think it's Tattered Leather is actually what it is. It's got a really deep brown with a touch of red undertone, and of course the mica and the shimmer. You can see the one on the left, I just kept adding things to it. So I tend to saturate the paper, then go in and heat set it and see if we need to add to it. Now, to kind of bring out the wood grain, I'm using some Donna Salazar mixed media ink in the, it's leather too. So it's very dark brown. It's darker than our walnut distress stain. So here is how we do the second version. If you don't have any glimmer mists, you can start out by darkening the background a little bit with walnut stain ink and a blending tool. And that looks pretty good. And then I've pulled, I think I have Vintage Photo, Gathered Twigs, and Walnut Stain out. And I am putting a little out on my craft mat. I'm going to add some water to it, and almost like a watercolor, just blend this out. And you can see you do get a totally different look than the other one. This one actually reminds me a little bit more of oak wood grain that has a little bit of that reddish yellow undertone to it. I'm going to darken it up a little bit with a combo of our Vintage Photo and Walnut Stain. And I think it is such a pretty look to it. Very different from our other one, but I like it just as much. So if you have one kind of supply, use it, because you can get great results even if you're not using exactly what I'm using. Now, to darken up the wood grain a little bit, I'm using the direct to paper technique with my Walnut Stain ink pad, and that gives us a really fun finished wood grain to work with, which I think makes a perfect kind of rustic backdrop for our poinsettia, a frosted film poinsettia. Now I'm going to add a little bit of that frosted film. I had a strip left over, and I'm adding it to some Simply Chartreuse cardstock so that I have that same kind of shimmery feeling. And I'm making a little typing paper or copy paper shape to put both of these strips down on, because I'm actually going to go to my sewing machine and do a little zigzag stitch to hold those two together, or at least make them look like they were held together with stitching. And I found that adding it to a little piece of paper sometimes will make that a little easier. I'm going to take some tape and tie down my stitched thread ends, and I'm going to use some linen trim. I love this stuff. I love that when you're finished tying it, that you can kind of pull it apart, and it gets this really lovely frayed look. And it works really well with this rustic frosted look here. So you can see I punched a hole in the cover, and I was able to attach my poinsettia with the brad. And I just went into my bag of greens. Around Christmas season, I start cutting lots and lots of bits and pieces, and then I just use them as I need them. That way, there's always some greens on hand. And you'll see they're both going to end up different because I'm using different pieces, but I'm using a little bit of Aleene's tacky glue and putting that, just attaching it down in there. Now, I found some of these that I had cut on book paper, and I love those pine boughs with the book paper on them. I will tell you that I actually think that they would make great feathers too. So I always love when I have a supply that will do double duty on something. Going to go ahead, I figured since I loved both of the wood grains, I would go ahead and make finished cards out of them, and just add in some greenery. And then I felt like I wanted to kind of tie it together a little bit more. I wanted to put a little more shimmer on it. So I am using, I believe the Glimmer Mist was driftwood, just to put a little shimmer on it. I want to create a little snow spatter. And to do that, I'm using some distress paint, but I also use some of Heidi Swapp's Color Shine in white so that we would get some sparkly snow as well, because we're doing this rustic look to it, but I love that it has that shimmery shine to it. I'm really into mixed textures this particular Christmas season, and I love these two together. Just putting a little snow, little sparkly snow. Fun, 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 fun. Oh, and I got a big blob, but you know what? Because it is distress paint and color shine, I can kind of mop it up and it will not cause me any grief. I'm going to add my card front to the card base. Now you can see I'm pulling that lace, that linen trim apart, and I love that it has both a sophisticated look and a rustic look to it too. So there are our two cards. Love them. Just love how they turned out. Love that you can kind of see through the poinsettias. I love that they're frosted and festive, and I love putting them together with what looks like a pine board or a walnut board. I'm now adding the toppers so that we have a really nice yellow center. Because I use the large yellow brads, that just helps bring out the yellow center there. So there you have it. Lots and lots and lots of techniques. And even if you don't want to do one of them, I hope you'll pick something from there and try it for yourself. I appreciate you stopping by. If you have not subscribed to me, please do. That's the best way to find out when I have new videos. And please follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, and Twitter. I'll be back with another project real soon. In the meantime, be sure and save some time for creative play.